And the key term you've already introduced is rep ranges. So that's what we're deep diving today. Ready?
Yep, let's do it.
Hey, John and Tex. There seems to be a lot of flip-flopping in strength and fitness in regards to rep ranges for strength and getting jacked. Power Athlete has been consistent with John's explanation of reps since CrossFit football days. If you can shed some light on this, it would be great. Bye.
All right, so we got two pieces out of that one. So let's look at rep ranges. Years ago, I periodized rep ranges based upon user exposure to the barbell. So when I launched CrossFit football, we had an amateur, and people took huge offense. Like, I'm not a fucking amateur. I'm like, well, maybe when you drink, you're an amateur, because that was one of our favorite points. See somebody like have a drink, fall down, like, fucking amateur. But the amateur was really the beginner and really had to do with your exposure to a barbell. So we had 30, 40-year-old people that had never really trained with barbells, or if they had lifted weights, had just gone to the Globo and fucked around on a bunch of machines. But when it came down to actually doing some form of strength program that involved squatting twice a week, pulling heavy once or twice a week, pulling dynamically, hitting some overhead pressing, some bench press, big compound movements mixed with a smart accessory, sprinting and running, there were a lot of people that had never done anything like that. Mm-hmm. So they just fell within our amateur. And once they went into that program, it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if they were an amateur, they would be able to keep driving adaptation by using a basic linear progression. What we found was there were a bunch of key factors for strength. Obviously coordination being a big one, and a coordination requiring a very adept central nervous system. And the only way you're going to get that inter and intermuscular coordination and develop that level of coordination for strength was actually underneath a barbell.
So let's take a moment. Two key phrases that do play into rep ranges. You introduced intermuscular coordination, and I want people to think about bar path as a simple example, or if they see a teenager bench pressing or squatting for the first time, we get the Bambi legs, the shakes, and they have to find, and that's intermuscular coordination, where the quad and the hamstring are learning about each other exist and working together for hip extension. That's an example. And then intramuscular coordination be within the muscle. This is when the bar path, the movement pattern lines up, and now the muscle is allowed to express an amount of force or power to really hit that.
I believe we were training at the 12 when we were doing the Jack Street stuff, and there was a coach in there training a young volleyball girl, was probably 14 or 15, and she laid down to do the bench press. And as she's doing the bench press with the bar, like everything, it looks like she's racing a motorcycle, it's going up every which way. And the guy stops her and goes, "This looks dangerous," and goes over and puts her on just a
Smith
like
machine?
A Smith machine, so that he could control it. And it was like seeing strength in the wild. I got to see this inter and intermuscular coordination. Well, it would be inter would be the first one. Intra happens later. I'm seeing this in the wild, and I'm like, oh, look, strength training, strength happening, step one. And then watching this, let me think, good word, this plebeian.
No, he didn't know any better.
He didn't know.
Safety first.
Just basically stomp on this flower of strength and put her on a Smith machine. It was like, like you're watching Nature is Metal, and you see this beautiful animal come running, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, a lion tackles it and bites its head off.
Envision that music where it's like do 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 do,
and then a car hits them.
Yeah, and then hardcore metal comes in, and a freaking wolf comes out of nowhere and dominates. But
pretty much happened. So that guy fucked that whole thing up. So there are factors, but it really comes down to this idea of mechanical tension, and the only way you create a high degree of mechanical tension is going to failure.
Mm-hmm. I like that term. And I recognize that in coaching on the Field Strong, when we deep dove into French contrast and people were submitting their lifts to the feed, they were missing the targeted execution of isometric, eccentric, and concentric as we needed to truly drive the desired adaptation. So this is where, even with we program rep schemes, execution is the utmost importance, so you do accomplish, where Arnold says fail, and you're introducing mechanical tension. Those are key terms of execution that we need to drive the specific adaptation. So this imposed demand, this coaching that we are providing. I like the mechanical tension, especially when it comes to the both the isometric and the concentric, how we would coach. Isometric in that we want to load fast into a position. For example, an RDL. Start at the hip, and then almost like a free fall for a moment.
That's where you create that mechanical tension.
Until your body stops you, and then we're holding that mechanical tension for a specific count, and then it's not just going to the bottom of my RDL and holding. No, it's that catch. And then the quick note on the concentric, John, in that I want consecutive reps, 1, 2, 3 versus rep 1, and then 2, and then 3. So the tension builds up. By the time I get to set to rep 10 on my presses, my squat, whatever we're doing, shit, man.
Well, that's going to be...
I feel it.
Well, I know, but that's your ability to be able to tie reps together is going to be directly related to your level of conditioning. So, I mean,
Well,
that's where we push a ton of work within creating a large aerobic base in all the programs.
All the programs is key.
But the biggest factor comes down to how you lift the weights. And that's where we use compensatory acceleration and all the rep maxes, all the cat work, everything. We're trying to literally jump out of the box, jump out of the roof, and do everything that we can to continue to drive, speed as mechanical advantage increases, so to speed. So when it comes down to rep ranges, whatever rep that you pick, if you want to do singles, doubles, triples, 4s, 5s, 7s, 10s, whatever it is, and you're looking to build muscle, you have to create the highest amount of mechanical tension, what looks like going to failure. If you always stop with 1 or 2 reps in the tank and then wonder why you're not putting on muscle, that could be a reason. Now, a lot of times we'll have people, leave a few reps in the tank for their compound movements and then figure like, oh, I'll just go to failure on all the accessories. I think you're... while I think there's efficacy in that, I think you're leaving gains on the table. So the age-old leave a rep or 2 in the tank if muscle is the gain or is the goal, is to train to failure. Now, that caveat is for an intermediate to advanced athlete. When we start talking about a basic linear progression with a beginner, we just need them to add 5 pounds to the bar each time. Now, what's going to happen over the course of like 10 weeks, when they start adding 5 pounds, it might not look heavy, but it's still driving adaptation. So I think that there's these different, almost like lanes, different timing, like on the stop. Like, you get in the car and you start driving, you might not stop for 3 hours, but then after, driving for 10 hours, you got to stop every hour to get out and walk and shake your legs. So it really comes down to the individual. But biggest thing, avoid 1RMs with beginners. And if you want to put on muscle, we got to create mechanical tension. And if you're looking for strength and you're looking to really just increase your power output and really just look to be more dynamic, compensatory acceleration. Cool.
Yeah. I mean,
anything to add?
The programs themselves are reverse engineered from training goals that we've run into. If we look at Field Strong, Bedrock, Jack Street, Grindstone, especially, they're reverse engineered from goals people are aiming to accomplish. But then all programs have all different rep schemes in there. It's just a few adjustments of intensity and volume.
Yeah. And what's cool is if you look behind the curtain and you saw the templates and the way it's all designed, everything follows within the Power Athlete methodology. Mm-hmm. Now, how we get there and how we skin it and how we kind of add different pieces is within that variation. So one of my favorite terms, and this probably comes from the 90s, was body confusion. Remember muscle confusion?
Muscle confusion.
Muscle confusion.
Yeah.
So the last thing you want to do is confuse your muscles, right? You want your muscles to be very deliberate about what they're doing. Now, you don't want to overload and keep doing the same thing over and over again because eventually it stops working. So you have to add variety in different ways, but we're never trying to confuse our muscles. We want our muscles to be very deliberate about what they're doing, and moving fast is ideal.
Yeah. Whether that's squat, step, lunge, or through all planes of motion.
Or sprint.
Or especially that sprint.
Yeah, you can't sprint slow. So.
Write that down.
Going back, I'm a loaded freight train, and I'm right on track. I'm smoking.